Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Crush That Exam. I'm Dr. Erica Ligons, licensed clinical psychologist and exam coach. I am so excited to share yet another example of someone who has overcome the EPPP. So let's get into their story. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yes, I'm Dr. Roselee Ledesma. I earned my PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Arkansas, and I'm currently a postdoctoral resident at UCSD's Counseling Center. And I recently, just like last week, crushed that EPPP, and it felt cool to get to say that. I was like, this is why Dr. Erica named it this, because we get to say it once we pass.
Yes, you crushed it, and you really crushed it. You passed the exam easily on your first try, right?
Yeah, my first try.
Absolutely wonderful. So tell us, what was your experience like with studying and preparing for the exam prior to starting my coaching program?
So, as a first generation college student, I didn't really know much about the clinical piece of a doctoral program. So, like internship, licensure, all of that was pretty new. And it wasn't until the last 2 years that I decided I wanted to pursue licensure. Like, first and foremost, had previously been thinking more about like teaching, tenure track position, and then figured licensing help would come along the way. But due to some family circumstances and wanting to be closer to home, I was like, let me switch gears completely to focusing on licensure. And when I started my postdoc, one of my colleagues, I'll shout her out, Dr. Chili, she's actually an EPPP coach. And she shared that, coaching exists for the EPPP. She shared her story a bit about why she's a coach and her passion for also supporting BIPOC students in this process, and gave me a couple options of coaches that she knew of, like around the country. And Dr. Erica immediately stood out as a person of color who's like focused specifically on working with BIPOC students. That really stood out to me. And because I knew little about this process, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to just get as much support as I can. And I did do the math. Like, I checked out, how much session fees would be, the packages, and like all of that, according with like, the testing fees and all the information. And it really did like end up being worth it. I was like, okay, so if I do spend, this like amount of money on the testing and take the exam once, like that would actually all be worth it versus having to take it twice, also take like a huge hit to feeling like, that I maybe not enough to pass this exam. And then probably at that point, really wanting to get a coach. Um, it ended all being worth it, which is that was all my motivation to try to get just like the most support that I could on the first time around.
Absolutely. And, I tell you all the time, this is my dream situation. Although I work with people who have all sorts of different experiences with the exam, my hope is to be able to get to as many people at the beginning of their journey to really set them up for success so that they don't have to A, spend money that they don't have, or put themselves through the emotional turmoil of failing the exam multiple times if it can be avoided. And so I am, just so happy that you reached out, that someone sent you my way. And it sounds like, based on what you're saying, given that number one, I am a person of color myself, neurodivergent, and a first generation college student. And so because I have that unique life experience, I know that there are certain nuances in our experience that others may not relate to. And all of that is really baked into the coaching process. Like, for example, I know for many years, my mother thought I was going to be a psychiatrist because first generation to go to college and everything, sometimes these terms and things, family may not always know the difference between certain things. And so being able to make sure that the family system is aware of what's going on and that we give that extra attention to those details that first generation college students experience that others may not. And because the coaching is affordable, you looked at the numbers and it was just kind of like a no brainer.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think when and that was even counting like because you separated out by like coaching chunks and I was like I'm going to do the 16 sessions, like I'm going to need weekly accountability, I'm sure. And even with that being the most like expensive package on that just because it's the most number of sessions, when I calculated the cost per session, it was the lowest because I was, purchasing more sessions. And yeah, I think it all and so not only was it worth it because of the cost wise, but I also just had like no idea. I didn't know that there were some major test companies that had materials that you would then study that you had to buy, that some you could buy on a monthly basis. Like I didn't know any of that. And I got all of that knowledge through meeting with you. So it was like through the coaching, I got access to so much more information and guidance I needed along the way.
Yeah, like when we say Rosalie was a beginner new to this whole thing, like we're not joking, like, and that's the best thing because you didn't purchase anything, you didn't spend any money, you didn't put any time into anything. I was literally able to guide you from the very beginning. It was so magical, the whole experience. And so not only just getting that logistical support of how do you even go about this, what materials do you use and all that good stuff, what are some other things that you think were the most helpful about my coaching program, which consists of the audio program, one on one sessions, and the parallel study sessions where we all come together and study on Zoom to hold each other accountable?
Honestly, all three were crucial into me passing. So I think I can touch on why each of one of those was very important. So because I mean, and Eric, I mean, you know this, Erica. I didn't even know that you had to like ask the board. Like I ended up doing that kind of late and like it was delayed a lot because I kept like missing a piece of that info because I had really no idea. I mean, not only did I not train in the state of California, but again, this was all just like new info for me. But with the audio tape, literally having a packet where I could like break down like how am I going to study? How am I going to ask family members to support me? Just like getting me thinking about everything that I didn't know I need to be thinking about on the front end was really helpful. And I like that we had access to it and I was able to go back and listen to it when I was like in different phases of studying. I really enjoyed the like supplemental, like parents can listen to this. And as somebody who has Spanish speaking parents, you mentioned too, you're like, it's in Spanish too. And I'm like, this is perfect. And I was able to have my parents listen to it and like brainstorm of how they'd be able to support me or just, have a greater understanding of like how rigorous and difficult this exam would be. Um, so all of that was super helpful from there. You talked about like study strategies, even the fact of like practicing and like wanting to wear the outfit or do your hair in the way that you plan to do it. Like those are things I had never thought about of like at all. So that on the audio front and also individual coaching, because as each of those instances came up, we would talk about it in more detail. I think with the one-on-one, it was for me, it's so helpful to have accountability because I could tell myself like, oh, it's okay. Like I didn't do that much this week. I'll catch up next week. And then when that continues, like it can be hard to, get back on a roll or, maybe it's harder to do that, feel more judgment towards myself. So I think it was super helpful just to like, and I mean, you do a great job of like creating just like a therapeutic relationship where like I felt comfortable being honest and being like, you know what, like that was really hard to do and I didn't really work on it at all or I didn't meet my hours and just you're so gentle and also just straightforward of like okay well that we can't keep doing that if you want to keep this pace or we can and like let's take a break and I think that just like gentle support was so helpful throughout and just like instrumental in me progressing through each of the phases. I think with the both the audio and also the sessions we were able to just have like more of a structure because again I had like no idea how you study for this. I didn't know the content areas. Remember when I first listened to the material, I was like, I wonder if I'll ever learn the names of each like domain because like they're all just like random sections of psychology. But by the end, like I was like, okay, like I can name them. So just having the study method that you've created was really helpful. I feel like I viewed myself as somebody who like I would just take standardized tests and I never did particularly like stellar. Like I did miss out on funding opportunities in grad school because my scores weren't high enough, but I
Mm,
never really like super studied intensely. Had like some flashcards, but I didn't really like have that practice, which actually I went into this telling you like I'm not very disciplined, like I don't really know what I'm doing, like it takes me a long time to focus and stuff. So you're able to really like sit with me and challenge some of that. And really learn that like, no, I do have the skills and I can put systems in place to give myself the structure that I need, study the ways that I need to, learn the material and like pass. And then for the parallel study sessions, because again, I think studying on my own, I could be like, oh, well, like let me take a break, or like the laundry's done now, so let me go do that, or even my dog needs to go out, just giving myself a lot more breaks, which I think breaks are great, and also getting to like literally be on Zoom, cameras on with other people, was so helpful in just like making like steady progress. I remember seeing one of the study sessions was like 4 hours, and I was like, I don't think I've ever worked 4 hours straight, but knowing that there'd be like just support was like so helpful. So yeah, those are some of the ways that it helped.
Absolutely. People say that all the time about our weekend power sessions, I call them. They're 4 hours and 15 minutes, which is the exact length of the test if you do not have extended time accommodation. And it's so funny because people will say that, well, I can't sit for that long. I'm like, well, what are you going to do on test day? And they're like, oh, so then they realize, oh, wait, those sessions are really helpful. They can get me start to build that stamina to be able to sit for 4 hours and have the energy and the emotional regulation to like get through that. Right. And then, of course, there's other sessions throughout the week that are other lengths that aren't 4 hours. So there's lots to choose from. But I'm so happy that you participated in those. The time of this recording, it's still fairly new. And so it's growing, and it has been so cool to watch people pass that test. And then some are choosing to continue coming to the group to now study for other licensing exams that they have, like state ethics exams, or working on professional stuff, like keeping up with those notes and stuff like that, and writing reports and everything. So it's been really cool. And it really does take all of that to make it work, right? Like the audio program laid the foundation. The coaching sessions really help keep you on track. And I think the parallel study sessions really held it all together because a lot can happen in a week between sessions.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Or a lot cannot also not happen within a week. And if we go to every other week, whoo, then we really can like start to meander off in a different direction. So how long did we work together all together? Because the issue of how long this process takes is something that can bring up a lot of feelings for people. So how long did it take?
We worked together for a little over 6 months. So I started meeting. So right now it's around May, end of May, and we started working together at the end of October. I will add that I did take a break. So with the phases, I took a break after phase one, about like 2 weeks. It was around the holidays. And then it took me some time to start phase two. Um, yeah, it took me like a month. I was reviewing one section per week and did not feel like I could do any more than that. So that elongated the process. But I think overall, like it was closer to 6 months of studying on a more consistent basis for our work together.
Absolutely. And so we have to be transparent about the fact that this process is not without challenges and hiccups. Some things were coming up, some anxiety, some doubt, and things like that. And so we had to work through that. But you found your way, you found your rhythm, you started to trust the process. And then before long, you actually started to really see it paying off.
Yep. I think once we hit phase three and like starting to see like what the questions were like, where I was missing them in my notes, prioritizing like reviewing that content, I was like, okay, like this is all kind of coming together. And like I ended up doing outlines for my notes. So I'd literally pick up like packets of paper and I was like, I wrote all of this. Like I typed every single word of these like notes out. And like now I'm getting to review it. So it was like in my words, things that I had written up months ago.
Absolutely. And then we can touch on another thing around the length of time of working together, because there were times when you were like, "Oh, it feels like this is taking so long," and there was a lot of, like, self-comparison sometimes of, like, "I hear other people are doing it faster," and and all of that. So now that you're on the other side of it and you've got that hindsight bias to be able to look back and see it, what do you think about all of the stress that you felt around the time? Like, what would you tell yourself, especially in the earlier parts of it, or really all throughout it, that
Yeah.
part of you that was worried about the time it was taking?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that really made me anxious of like having this like perception of a timeline or saying, other people are passing it or other people are reviewing their notes faster than it takes me. I think I would tell myself just like keep going and everyone has their own pace. Like everyone has their own journey. Everyone has, their own life happening and like
Mhm,
your pace that you're finding and figuring out like is good for you. Because I mean, some people that I know who have taken it faster, who did not study for 6 months, during the exam felt like they weren't passing or like they, you know, were just like not in a good emotional state. And I practiced and worked very hard to not make any emotional judgments as I was taking it, but it did not feel like something that I couldn't do. It felt like I can take a question at a time. I've done this on practice tests. And I think the 6 months of working with you gave me that. And that gave me so much peace of mind. Like, even as I was taking the test, I was able to like take a break halfway through, which I remember hearing these audios when I was like starting to work with you because I was like, oh, I kind of want to see what her work is about. And I was like, how are people taking breaks in this 4 hour exam? Like, I've heard you just have to like go and you're like rushing to finish. But I was also able to take like pauses during the exam, take like a leisurely 10-minute snack break and bathroom break during the test, which I didn't even know that was possible. So I would say just like, keep going, keep pushing through. Like you're figuring it out for yourself, and everybody like needs different things.
absolutely. Slow and steady wins the race. By taking your time and following the program step by step, exactly the way I was guiding you to do it, you were more than ready on your test day. I mean, you were a well oiled machine and ready to go. It was
Yeah,
great.
I would say just trust Dr. Erica because there was a moment there. I mean, life happened and there was a lot going on, but you had suggested I move up my studying date, which I was like, that sounds wild, but like I trust you with my whole life and like I will do whatever you tell me. So if you think I should do that, I will.
Yeah.
We agreed that we that was not what we ended up doing, but I trusted you on like you don't need to take this final practice exam. And I was like, okay, like you know what you're doing. I'm gonna follow and like you never led me astray. So I'm so thankful for you.
Oh, thank you for those kind words. Anything that you would have done differently looking back?
I think hold less judgment towards myself of like I'm thinking back to phase two because even when I talk about the process, I'm like, oh, I studied for, over 6 months. And I'm like, yeah, and like I needed a break. Like I was tired. Like
Mhm.
that's why it was taking me so long to get through sections, or, I try to do work pretty thoroughly. So reading every word of something that I typed like takes time and just like being more gentle with myself. I think that that would have been helpful. And even throughout the process, just like giving myself more grace and like understanding for I'm figuring it out. Like this is literally I don't know fully what I'm doing. I've never done this before. I'm figuring it out and like that's okay.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So, what would you tell someone, especially who's new to all of this? Because believe it or not, they're the hardest people to convince that they could benefit from coaching. Many new test takers, again, are in a place where they feel like, oh, I don't think I need that, or I can figure this out. They don't understand the magnitude of this whole thing. And a lot of that is on the fault of our programs and training sites who are not giving enough education. So it's not all on them. But a lot of times they may feel like, I don't see the point of this or whatever. So, what would you tell someone who is particularly new to this process and they just are like, I don't know about this?
I would say if you want this to be a supportive, like as supportive as this can be with guidance and encouragement along the way so you won't feel alone in doing this, get a coach. If you want to take the gamble and like feel like you're doing this on your own, be rushing to figure it out. Like, sure, you can make that decision, but know that there are people who are like passionate about working with you, who are committed to helping you crush that exam on the first try, helping you communicate with your support system, and just give you all the nurturance along the way. Like, you don't have to do it alone. And if you figure out the budget for yourself, like, it may very well be worth it to be spending extra than you would if you didn't have to spend anything on coaching to do this process with like love, care, and intention. And like that may be so worth it.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Basically setting yourself up for success from the beginning. It just saves you so much time and money in the long run. It really does.
Yeah.
So,
And I think
oh, yeah, go ahead.
emotionally too, Dr. Erica, you had told me like, throughout the process, because you're super open of like, yeah, if you decide not to do this coaching and you were to fail, like, then you are also working with like the anxiety of even being in that testing center and what it felt like when you first failed, or like now you're pushing through like the anxiety of, what it means that I didn't pass it on the first time, or am I not smart enough? And like, not only are we dealing with like this content test taking anxiety stuff, but also like the worthiness piece. And that I know, just like as an emotional person, that would be just so much to carry as well. So yeah, you just helped me out with that so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the weight of this is heavy in every way, logistically, financially, mentally, emotionally. Woo, it's a lot. And so how can we set ourselves up in such a way that the cost won't be too great? So now that you're on the other side of this, you are literally now free from the EPPP. Now, I know you still have some other exams that you have to do because the state you live in requires some other stuff, but it's not nearly as much as, the EPPP, so you'll be fine. But what are you looking forward to both professionally and personally now that you're free from this and on your way to licensure?
I think professionally, to be able to be like compensated for my labor. Obviously, as trainees, we do not like we're worth so much. So I think that, and I know through along the way, for me, like not needing like white people to validate my work, my notes, my labor is just going to be like transformational. That like what I'm saying and like choosing to do in therapy, like is sufficient. I don't need somebody writing it off for me. Obviously, as trainees, like we need that to some degree. We need a licensed person, but like I'm that person now. So I think I would say that on the professional end. And on the personal end, there's so many hobbies that I've been wanting to explore that I just have put on pause because I'm, studying for this exam, and I'm prioritizing, putting the hours into studying for this. So just like being able to sit in awe and exploration of like what I enjoy is some of the things that I'm looking forward to.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Well, Rosalie, it's been a blast to work with you, to support you, to have you be a person of color, first generation American. I don't even know if English was your first language, was it?
It was not, yeah, Spanish was my first language.
Exactly. And to have you come through this experience on top with no bruises really. Like you kind of sailed through this thing. This is wonderful. And I just wish you nothing but tons of fun, success, and prosperity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Erica. It was a joy getting to work with you, and like you made this process like bearable, and I will forever be grateful for that and continue to speak about EPPP coaching and that support is out there for students.